Hello there. Welcome to the case wrap up for episode 7, Yvette and Dottie. The names are Jennifer Vay's family members. It was her
Mhm.
younger sister, who was 12. We've heard her throughout the series. She's talked about the night she went missing. She's given a lot of character references. She's debunked certain things that other people have said. And the other person, Dottie, is her mother, who was out the night Jennifer went missing, and Kirk has talked to her a lot. And I thought it was nice that I didn't realize where he was going with the title until near the end, where he said like, "Hey, so when I started this, when
Mhm.
I envisioned doing the case and trying to find Jennifer Fay, it was going to solely be focused on Jennifer Fay trying to bring peace to her family members, to that community." And he's like, I didn't expect Jennifer to play such a side,
Yeah.
not that she didn't have a main role, but it definitely went from just being about Jennifer to being about Faith, to being about
Mhm.
April, to being about Kevin, just a whole bunch of different
Yep.
things. So I think Kirk was just like, this episode, he just kind of wanted to really bring it together and just show really what the family of Jennifer Fay has had to go through these past 30 years of just absolute hell when it comes to
Mhm.
false leads and reluctance from police officers and having crazy people come up to them with these crazy theories, and
Mhm.
all that. So
Yeah, I really like
Harrison,
this episode. I really like this episode, and I like that Kirk went back to just giving some more like backstory on
yep,
Jennifer and the ongoing case. Just like you can kind of get more of the struggle of those. Like it's been 30 years,
yeah,
and like the one episode you could kind of get like the first episode that focused on Jennifer. You
hmm
could get that, but this kind of just like puts it all into perspective.
yeah. This puts it all into perspective, and it really shows that it's like, even though it was 30 years ago, I mean, they're still dealing with this
Yeah.
constantly. It's just whether it be, you know, um, uh, Karen Decosta, showing up at their door and spouting about how it was her ex boyfriend who actually ended up killing Jennifer and Bering, or them
Mhm.
having false leads, a couple of years ago with Bones in Brockton, and they're thinking, oh, this could possibly be it, but it ends up being the a male's bones.
Mhm.
So it started off with kind of probably the most hopeful, I'd say, Jennifer's family probably was
Mhm.
throughout this entire thing, was that they had some leads. They said that there was some form of national programming that went out that talked about Jennifer and showed her face, and there were a
Mhm.
couple of leads about a woman living on an army base in Louisiana, and uh, so they followed these leads, and apparently it's funny when you look at what when they're talking, and Kirk's like, oh, you can actually kind of see the similarities between this woman and
Mhm.
Jennifer. And Yvette or Dottie, I forget which one it was, goes, you can even see like the scar. The scar is very similar. And that would definitely be like a
I think that
distinguishable.
I think that was the other detective or the PI. What's her
Yes.
name?
Oh, okay.
Michelle Littlefield. Yeah, that was Michelle
Yes.
Littlefield.
Okay. Yeah. And they were talking. I mean, if you see that, that's definitely something where,
Yeah.
someone can change their hairstyle or their body type or something like that. But this scar. So they ended up going down to Texas, because that's where moved. And the PI went to approach the woman and told Dottie to stay in the car. We'll see.
Mhm.
I mean, just you don't want to just ambush this woman and suddenly, if Dottie just came up to her
Yeah.
crying, you wouldn't understand. She came out and she said that as soon as she saw this person, she's like, that was not my Jennifer. So
Mhm.
it was. I can imagine that's very heartbreaking,
Mhm.
to fly all the way across the country in hopes of possibly finding, not necessarily just even finding, getting closure, but that Jennifer would still be alive in this case.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that would be, I can completely see going from like the highest of highs to the lowest of
Yeah.
lows there. And
The only thing I wonder about that situation is like like the whole like bringing the whole family, Dottie and
mhm,
Yvette, to Corpus Christi to
mhm.
go like see her with her own eyes. Like, shouldn't there
I
have been like a picture shown for like some
I
of
think they probably could have held off for a month or two
yeah.
and maybe did a little bit more research into this woman, or like talked to her. Like the first time they talked to her, would not have Dottie in the back seat.
Hmm.
Just because that, I mean, it just sounds like this just brings more trauma
Yeah.
to Dottie. And I don't think it was Yvette. I think it was Dottie's sister. I think it was
Oh, okay.
Dottie and Jennifer's aunt
Hmm.
who ended up going there. But I mean, it did end up kind of being like a heart, kind of like a little touchy feely
Yeah.
about how the woman, she went through foster care. She never knew who her mother was, and this Dottie, who obviously lost her daughter at 16, they embraced and they cried, and I could see that being a very special moment.
Hmm.
So, but it's just got to be tough, just from a mother's perspective,
Oh, of
to
course.
be
Yeah.
able to just be able to instantly just be like, no,
Hmm.
that's just not my daughter. Um, I definitely do think it was something where if they probably should have waited a month or two or tried to make a phone
Hmm.
call or something first, but but they didn't. Um,
I
and
I think even like Dottie said the second she saw her, like she knew it wasn't her. Just like wouldn't have picked like a pit. Like I'm always thinking like just like a picture, and
mhm.
she would be able to tell from just like a couple pictures, and then you wouldn't have to like go through like that's another traumatic experience, kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, you hear other things where people would call and they would be like, "Oh, she's in a car at the bottom of a lake and it's in the middle of
Oh
winter,
yeah.
so now they have to wait months for this to unfreeze and to get a diving
Hmm.
team out there."
Yeah,
Meanwhile,
that was another one that Castro and Littlefield were dealing with.
these private investigators are the only ones who are actually following up on any of these
Yeah.
leads. Because as we heard, our old friend Ann Desmond from episode 1, whom, if you thought that she did some, shoddy police work in episode 1, I just think she's a mean person after listening to today's interview. It sounds like it was from the same interview. She straight up just blames Dottie. Sounds like the entire Brockton Police Department is just like, well, the MO is that the mother was a drunk, and that's it. So since the
Yeah.
mother was a drunk, case closed. My question would be, okay, would you expect that the mother sold Jennifer or something like it can't just be that the mother's a drunk, so we're just not going to look into it. Also, I mean, she went out drinking one night,
Hmm.
um, and left her 16-year-old daughter, home alone. That happens all the time. It's not like she was pimping her out or something
Yeah.
of that nature, or was doing something egregious like that. It was just like the first thing, like Kirk and Steve, when they went to the Brockton Police Department, the first thing they said was how she likes to drink, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like a lot of people like to
What
drink.
does that have
Doesn't
to do with anything? Yeah.
it has absolutely nothing to do with it. And I was shocked to hear.
Well,
Uh,
I had to go back. I was like, it first made me laugh. Like, how could someone like say this on the phone? Like,
oh yeah,
you're being recorded, and you're saying, like, you're saying this about someone. Like, it's just, it was appalling to hear.
yeah. It was just like, holy shit. I mean, this person is just willing to straight up be like, oh, nope. I mean,
Yeah.
there's why do you think Kirk and Steve, are looking into this? Is because
Mhm.
there's evidence out there, there's suspects out there, and she just goes, nope. Still drove off. I still think she
Mhm.
drove off on a motorcycle. Why? Oh, because her mom was drinking. And Kirk made a
Mhm.
good point. Is like, she could have went to go see a movie. She could have went out grocery shopping. She could have been sick. She could have been in the hospital, and these things still could have happened.
Yeah.
But
It's basically just telling Kirk, no, we didn't care about the case.
it and I think that's more of like a systematic issue of the time, because I mean
Mhm.
they said they the like weeks before the Brockton police chief was like indicted on charges of like stealing cocaine and doing and having like bribes and everything like that. So
Mhm.
I mean, it starts from the top. If you know that your chief is, stealing coke and all this other shit, why are you going to care about a single missing persons case
Mhm.
when you can just brush it off? And especially just apparently just everyone just went with the MO. She drinks, so apparently
Mhm.
her missing daughter doesn't matter, which is just heartbreaking. And I could
which
definitely.
which I kind of, I mean, I could understand them, like if like that like the cocaine scandal happened, that was 30 years ago, and then they
Mhm,
had the case came up with on them and they didn't do their best job. But
mhm.
now, even 30 years later, Ann Desmond is saying the same thing.
Oh, and the Brockton Police Department are saying the same thing too. Like,
Yeah.
is the first thing when you open the Jennifer Faye case, like, number one, by the way, the mom likes to drink. Number two, Jennifer Faye went missing on this date. It's
Mhm.
like there are much more bigger factors at play here than an irrelevant fact that just has this ad hominem fact
Mhm.
that makes absolutely no sense. But it does sound like this Molly Bish Foundation that has worked with the Faye family
Mhm.
has done a lot and has led to more leads and sounds like they've done not just with Jennifer's case, but with many missing persons
Mhm.
cases. And it's sad that uh, Yvette and Dottie have had to rely on private investigators and charities in order to do
Mhm.
honest police work.
And there's
So.
been so many, like it sounds like there's been so many, like like possible leads, but
Mhm.
he Charlie Castro said, like once those leads are exhausted, they always go back to the same path they were originally on,
Yeah,
which is kind of, that's like a sad sentence of itself. Like
it's just like,
like we're not getting anywhere.
and I mean, I can only imagine just having all these different leads and knowing all these things and knowing that certain people won't cooperate. Like Kevin Mailer and stuff would cooperate in the sense that he would talk to
Mhm.
people, but as they get on later in the episode, uh, what can I think of his first name?
Richie.
Uh, Richie Natale, he uh, he would always lawyer up and not say anything, and it
Mhm.
really seems like they kind of dropped the ball, the police department, on possibly arresting him or trying to press some form of charges to get him to take the stand of some sort.
Mhm.
Um,
Or just trying hard to get, just to have a conversation.
yes, just have a conversation with the guy, because I mean he seems to be like Kirk says, like he doesn't blame him for not talking because nothing good can come out of it. But
Mhm.
the amount of times his name has been brought up and then Natalie's name has been brought up, um, it definitely deserves an interview to see exactly what
Yeah.
went on. Um, but the weirdest part of this episode, though, had to have been the Karen Decosta
Yeah.
situation. Um, to know that just one day, I can just imagine, Dottie just at her house, uh, and suddenly her doorbell rings, and someone's like, "I know what happened to Jennifer. I know what happened to Jennifer," and you get all excited because you're like, "Oh my goodness! Like we're finally going to bring some closure to this. We're going to look into it." This
Mhm.
woman's going off about how her ex boyfriend murdered her and buried her, and I think Yvette uh, had like a really good point where she was like there was something that clicked where like we were all in
Mhm.
on it, and then she probably said something outrageous where it was like, okay, I bet this woman is actually full of shit and we need to like get to the bottom of this. So
Mhm.
I'm glad they called the police. It was good that Kirk gave the backstory that before, that she sounds like she's, for what we
Yeah.
know, has tortured her ex-boyfriend,
This is the thing that she does.
of with rape accusations and trying to
Mhm.
get him killed and trying to have someone kidnap her daughter to pretend to be him.
Mhm.
I mean, that's not even just wrong, just based on what you're doing to him, but like what you're doing to the Faye family is just tragic.
Mhm.
You're trying to use them to propel
Yeah.
your own
Agenda.
agenda, and it's just like I don't know. So that
Yeah. I don't know if that like it was that a targeted thing that she was doing. I don't know.
no, but I think I don't think she was trying to target necessarily, but I
Mhm.
think it's terrible that that in her mind she was like, oh yeah, this grieving family of this missing daughter of 15 years. I'll just go to them and just tell her that my ex boyfriend killed her,
Mhm.
and and that's how I'll end up getting him in jail. Um, I thought that was it seems like every other corny we turn with this podcast is another uh, crazy character that just is unbelievable,
Mhm.
honestly. So I don't know if you have anything to say about Karen or
I think we said a lot. We said all
yeah,
all that we had about Karen.
yeah. So to
One of
kind
the
of get
one of the
back,
other one of the other
yep,
interesting parts was after they talked about the Brockton cocaine incident,
they talk about the
and they
Walhalla.
yeah, the Walhalla,
Yeah,
Ronald Wilbanks.
yes,
Um, I thought like it didn't really he like Kirk said it doesn't really have to do with the story. It was just a interesting coincidence that like the two places that they're working with had this like same thing going on 30 years later.
yes. It seems like Walhalla is kind of 30 years behind Brockton in
Mm,
the sense that they're going through this now, and it sounds to me like we're from Massachusetts. We know what police chiefs are. They kind of have some sort of respect. They're in charge of a lot of people. I have a feeling in Walhalla, it's very much like very
mm,
just not on the same level. I don't think like the current police chief of Brockton would be inviting the disgraced police chief over
mm,
uh, to the station for an interview with some investigators. But it kind of sounds like it's like you scratch my back. We all kind of are in this together. He had dealings with drugs. He had intimidation things.
mm,
Um, they said they reached out to him, and he said that Kevin Mailer is a piece of shit. So it sounds like
mm,
he knows of Kevin Mailer. I don't know if he possibly could have had some dealings with him, not necessarily in like an arresting way, but he possibly could have been like, okay, well, this guy's the drug dealer in the town, so he gives us some sort of cut. So he could have had
mm.
some sort of thing to deal with it that went wrong, and that's why he thinks that Kevin's a piece of shit. But it's just it was just like you can kind of hear it in Kirk's voice when they're like, "Oh, we're here to meet with," and he's like, "Yeah, I don't think he'll be making it in today." And it's like, and then he practically threatens them. He's like, you
Yeah.
just can't be going up to people's houses around here, knocking on doors and things like that. It's like, like, oh,
Oh, I'm gonna
okay,
get
Jesus
shot. I'm gonna
Christ,
get shot.
yeah. So like, no wonder Kirk was thinking he was in a shit ton of danger
Oh yeah.
when he was down there.
Mm,
That was just weird. It makes you really think like what else is going on in that Walhalla area
mm,
in regards to drugs or sex trafficking or
mm,
something like that. So um, another thing, the last thing they kind of talked about was was an interview with Kevin's cousin,
mm,
Kim, who you'll remember has said multiple times, who Kevin has said multiple times, is the reason why he is the way he is. He was the perfect angel until one day he saw um, Kimberly and her boyfriend or husband committing sexual acts in front of the children. And he went and told the police, and then they just went, you know what? We're just going to blame you for the Jennifer Faye disappearance. And next thing Kevin starts doing drugs to cope with this. He starts hanging out with the wrong people. He starts selling drugs. And from what Kimberly says, it does not sound like Kevin does not sound like they're on the best of terms. And it
mm,
also does not sound like Kevin is telling the truth. Obviously, we know the truth lies somewhere in the middle. It sounds like she obviously has a strong bias against Kevin, and Kevin has a strong bias against her.
yeah.
Um, but like every single was like, oh well, I think Kirk was like, oh, that you were doing sex acts in front of the children, and then she goes off about how that doesn't even make sense because of the bedrooms and everything like that. And then at one point, she's talking about how she looked outside her window and Kevin was holding a video camera, videotaping them.
Yeah.
And then when he confronted her, they confronted him later about it, he said that wasn't him. And then she also said it wasn't. She said that Mailer admitted to killing Jennifer one night when they were talking about like death or something like that, in that she did not report this to the police until months afterwards. So it definitely sounds like, this wasn't something where she heard and she's like, this needs to be shown to police. This definitely seems to be like something she heard, and then she used as kind of, oh, well, when you get me in trouble for this, I'll just, bring up the fact that you killed Jennifer Faye.
Yeah, I like that story that we've heard that Kevin's told. I was thinking that like there's no chance that that's what happened, but I guess Kimberly actually did report Kevin to the Brockton police. But I think I said was it the third episode or something when Kevin brought the story up, that like how would Kimberly know, like based on Kevin's account of the story, how would Kimberly know to kind of tip off the Jennifer Faye case that Kevin did it?
Yeah.
So in Kimberly's story, that makes more sense that he would actually mention it. Like if she did it randomly, like just a random cold case, that doesn't really make sense. But if he actually did mention it,
and the fact that he had some involvement with it, it's just like, okay, well, why would this be brought up if it, had nothing to do with it? So I did find it interesting though when she says, when she was like, and that Richie Natale, he said that too, but she was quick to say she doesn't think Rich did it. She blames it all on Kevin. So I mean, that just goes to show like her bias. She's not interested in finding out who actually did all this. She just has a bias towards Kevin.
She also did say, well, I don't know how true this is, but Kevin punched her son at like when he was 5.
Yes. Which I mean, we're just going to have to go based on their word of mouth.
Well, that kind of goes against Kevin saying that she like reporting her for child abuse or something.
The truth is probably that there was like abuse all around, and that she looked at his abuse and thought that was terrible, and he looked at her abuse and thought that was terrible, like what Kevin does with himself. How he's a saint when he goes and beats someone up, but someone else beats someone up, and they're demified, or they're evil. So that's I mean, that's all I really have to say about Kimberly. She did seem very passionate about, talking about Kevin. She was definitely very open to, she said she was willing to testify, stand trial, take a polygraph test, which is, I just feel like everyone wants to take a polygraph test nowadays. This seems to be the big thing, is everyone's just asking for a polygraph test. But yeah, so do you have anything else to say about Kimberly?
No, I think, I mean, that was probably my favorite section of the podcast, of the episode, just because it was kind of wacky, but it was important.
Yeah. So at the end of the episode, I was kind of realizing, it's this episode 7 of 8. And everyone kept asking, like, how is this? Like, I can't imagine this wrapping up in, 2 episodes, and there's 1 episode left. And I'm convinced we've come to the conclusion it's not going to wrap up. It's still an open investigation. There's not going to be an end to this in the series. At least there's not going to be a conclusion in episode 8, unless it comes with, a conviction of someone for one of these crimes, and I just don't think that's going to happen. I think that's
I've seen a lot of people like worried that like this is going to end, like this isn't going to end like it's not a television show. There's no writers involved. It's just, I mean, this is a case that hasn't been solved yet.
Yes.
A lot of true crime pods use like cases that have been solved, and they just go
Mhm.
through it, and they're able to script that and put the reveals at the end. This is different. This is ongoing. And basically Kirk is just trying to get the story out so that more can come out of it.
So, I mean, I think he's done a great job of this. I think,
Mm-hmm.
it's receiving national attention. He was on Access Hollywood. I think just the more eyes and the more pressure, I guarantee you, like the Walhalla Police Department is probably one of those things where like once the public pressure starts getting to them, they start acting, a little bit more like police
Mm-hmm.
officers. So,
I
yeah, so
think
hopefully that.
if they were right, if they did happen to write the story, I think a good ending would be kind of getting that Richie Natali interview. That's what I was thinking when I was
Yep.
kind of thinking of how it could wrap up,
Mhm.
because like he's the one person that no one's been able to talk to.
Yeah, that would be like you said, a fairy tale, but
Mm.
like a perfect ending. But I just don't see
Yeah.
it. I kind of see it, and it was kind of hinted at the end of the episode. Was that the ending is just like, okay, well, this was one particular case. Here are so many other cases that are in the same. It's not the
Mm.
rich white college girl who goes missing. It's someone who's from not necessarily a broken home, but on the lower the lower spectrums of life in the South, and all these missing people. There was a bunch of different names that were named at
Mm.
the end of the episode, and I think it's going to be kind of like, listen, just because it's the police say it's an open and shut case doesn't necessarily mean. I mean, if you look at this at face value, if you just go into the Brockton Police Department and asked about Jennifer Faye, they would tell you, well, her mom liked to drink, so she just disappeared one night,
Mm.
and that would be the official story. So I think Kirk's just trying to get more people just to kind of not necessarily act like he did, but just kind of get more
Mm.
eyes going forward when these things do happen.
And I think after this episode, the show, like the season is over, but it's not over.
Yeah.
Kirk said we're gonna keep keep
Touch.
at it, and they'll probably do some sort of epilogue thing, if anything, any more
That'd be
comes to
great.
light. Mhm.
In like a year or two, if they get a conviction of some sort, that would be awesome.
Mhm.
But yeah, that about does it for episode 7. There's only one episode left. I'm looking forward to it.
Mhm.
I'm just
It went by quick.
It did go by quick. It seemed like it was just yesterday episode 1 came out, but it's incredible the amount of names and missing people that have come up from this, like Kirk said, just this one Reddit thread he found on Jennifer Faye.
Mhm.
So anything else you want to say, Harrison, before we
I think I'm all good.
awesome. Well, we will talk to you guys next Thursday.